Has capitalism in the West kind of just morphed into this like corporatocracy? And is a corporatocracy really just communism for corporations? Let's dive into it. So a couple weeks ago, the Lex Fridman podcast put out this clip, communism versus capitalism versus corporatism, which, by the way, I've never really, I don't think, heard the word corporatism. I certainly didn't know how to say it. Corporatocracy? Corporatocracy. But it was interesting. It got me thinking, I obviously believe in a free market, and I believe that capitalism is the purest form, or should be the purest form of a free market. But it kind of got me thinking about where our economic and political system is going. Obviously, I think a lot of things relate back to Bitcoin and how a corporatocracy is kind of worse, and how we're kind of living in this corporatocracy bubble. So before we dive into the clips and dive into the comments and see what the internet has to say about capitalism versus a corporatocracy, I want to really truly define what the two things are. With capitalism being an economic and political system in which production of goods or services are privatized and operated for profit. I actually heard Jack Mallers talk about this in such a perfect way. And it was the profit of your business or of your efforts are a demonstration that you are giving to the world more than you are consuming from it. You're not a leech, in other words, which I thought was beautiful. And that goes right down to you as an individual. If you're a high school student working minimum wage, are you spending less than you earn? If so, you are truly giving more production, giving more value to the world than you consume from the world. As a business, on the maximum upper scale, it's the same exact thing. Are you giving more to the world than you take from it? That is capitalism. That is profit in its purest form. Versus a corporatocracy, when the largest private entities in an economic system control the political system, interest groups, lobbying, corrupt politicians, all the stuff we're seeing right now in the 2024 US election. So we have Cenk Uygur here, who's the host of this kind of leftist, maybe left-leaning show called The Young Turks, and he defines all three, and I want to watch about it.
So you're actually, as far as I understand, pro-capitalism.
Yes.
Which is an interesting place to be. That's the thing that probably makes you center left and then still populist. You're full of beautiful contradictions, let's say this, which will be great to untangle. But what's the difference between corporatism and capitalism? Is there a difference?
So I really believe in capitalism. I don't think that there's really a second choice. Where it gets super interesting is the distinction between capitalism and socialism, because that's not at all as clear as people think it is. And people often say socialism and communism as synonyms when they're not synonyms, right? And so I view it as there's basically four distinct areas. It's obviously a spectrum. Everything is a spectrum, right? On one end, you have communism on the left, and on the other end, you have corporatism on the right, okay? And I would argue that capitalism is in the middle. And so communism, we know, state owns all property. You're not allowed to have private property. Communism makes no sense at all, totally opposed to human nature. It never works. It always evolves into dictatorship because it is not built for human nature. We're never going to act like that. It's not in our DNA. You could try to wish it into existence, and they have, and it never works. And it's because once you have almost no rules in terms of, we're all equal, and even though communism eventually winds up having an enormous amount of rules, right? It creates a power vacuum.
You're talking about having rulers without rules. This is actually the antithesis of Bitcoin. Some might say Bitcoin is the antithesis of communism, and they're bang on. I like this definition a lot. I like how he's describing this, because when you have a set of rules, or a lack of rules, a lack thereof, and you kind of pretend like everyone is equal, is actually anti-God, because God created everyone to be unique. And I think that putting everyone on the same playing field, saying no one has more value than the other, is just wrong. Different beings have different values. I like this kind of I don't know, that's not pissing me off. I'm sure it'll piss me off on the other side. But I do agree that this communist system doesn't work, where everyone's equal, own nothing, be happy, sounds like the WEF.
When you say, hey, there's no structure of power here, right? We're all equal. It's a flat line. One guy usually gets up, because that's human nature, and goes, I don't think so.
Yeah, and then you end up with what we have now, which is you have a ruler over said rules, and that is the worst case scenario.
Now, corporatism is just as extreme and just as dangerous. And that is basically what we have in America now. What we have in America now, and this is another giant trick that the Matrix played on everybody, that they did a shell game, and all of a sudden extreme corporatists like Manchin and almost every Republican in the Senate are moderates. Oh my God, Mitch McConnell all of a sudden is a moderate, and et cetera. As long as you're not a populist. Populists are never moderate, okay? But if you love corporations and corporate tax cuts and everything in favor of corporations, you're magically called a moderate when you actually, according to the polling, have super extreme positions that the American people hate. And by the way, that's part of the reason for the rise of Trump. We can come back to that, okay? But the second shell game is taking out capitalism, putting in corporatism, but still calling it capitalism. Okay, so what is corporatism? It is when corporations slowly take over the system and create monopoly and oligopoly power.
This is 100%. I've actually been feeling this because I am so pro-capitalism, but I hate the current system so much. I haven't been able to put into words why I do not resonate with our existing system that exists here, and I think he's about to help me.
But the most important distinction, Lex, is that corporatism hates competition. It wants monopoly and oligopoly power, whereas capitalism loves competition and wants the free market.
Oh man, that is said so well. And if this corporatocracy, what he's saying, they hate competition, that is the Canadian environment as we know it today. You look at our banks, you look at our media. I mean, for goodness sake, the Canadian government just banned foreign media from posting on Facebook and social media sites. Like, we are living in a country that hates competition so much, but calls it capitalism. And as a capitalist, I love competition. I love it when our competitors put out good products. That pushes us, that forces us to innovate. It allows us to innovate on top of their innovation. This is how the end consumer wins. This is how we finally come to our mission of enabling independence. It's only through competition. I am really jiving with this.
But the government needs to understand that and protect us from that power that they are going to exercise to get to those results.
See, this is where I finally start to disagree with this man. The government doesn't have to. The government needs to get out of the way to let the free market protect us.
If you think free markets is there is no government, you read it wrong. Go back and reread Adam Smith. He says you must protect against monopoly power. If you do not protect against monopoly power, you will have no free markets. And he's absolutely right.
Yeah, that's not saying that we need a government. That's saying that we need a strong free market. That's saying we need a low barrier to entry and a high number of competition. Government has nothing to do with, all they do is make barrier to entry high. So you're just already contradicting yourself and saying, hey, put a government in place to protect this. Well, you're already going to make a harder barrier to entry. And then it's also going to reduce your ability to consume, reduce your ability to have competition. So I disagree with that.
But the bigger corporations, even there's a third distinction. It isn't that there are certain industries that are worse. There's just that there are industries that are better at lobbying. So anyone who, like right now, number one donor in Washington, a lot of people make a mistake. They think it's APAC or they think it's the oil companies or the banks. No, it's Big Pharma. Okay. And who has the most power in this country? Big Pharma. So we can't even negotiate the drug prices. I mean, look, guys, think about it this way. That's like saying, okay, here's a bottle of water. And normally in the free market, that would cost about $1, right? And in the for Medicare, the drug companies come in and go, no, I'm not charging $1 for that water. I'm charging $100. And the government has to say, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Of course, sir. We'll pay $100. That's why I compared it to communism, because I can't imagine anything more diametrically opposed to the free market than you, the consumer, have to pay whatever the hell a corporation charges. That's insanity, let alone the patents, let alone the fact that the American people pay for the research and then they make billions of dollars off of it and we get nothing but robbed by them. So it's about lobby power. Oil companies have huge lobby power. Defense contractors have huge lobby power. It's not that they're more evil. It's just that they have figured out the game better and they have basically taken the influence they need to capture the market, capture the government, and and snuff out all competition.
Back to this free market idea. Figured out the game better. The only way there is a game is if there's someone in charge that you can lobby. All lobby power completely disappears when you come. Like, the only way to lobby me as a human being, as an individual, give me the best service for the lowest price. And that probably runs true for like 99% of people on planet Earth. The only way to actually functionally do that is to remove the people who you are lobbying to, so that we can actually have a free market.
So, for example, in my opinion, AIPAC has totally bought almost all of Congress. And so now other countries are going to wake up and go, wait, you could just buy the American government? So AIPAC is going to spend about $100 million in this cycle, and then they're getting $26 billion back. So every country in the world is soon going to realize, oh, take American citizens that live there, get them a tremendous amount of money, and just buy the U.S. government, right? But for corporations, they've already realized that on a massive scale, right? So, for example, one of the most powerful lobbies is car dealerships. So at the national level, you got pharma and you've got defense contractors, et cetera. At the local level, guys who have huge power, number one is utilities, number two is real estate, and then car dealerships are hilariously among the top, right? Because it's local businesses that are, financing the politicians at the local level. So they passed a law saying that you have to sell through dealerships, but Tesla doesn't sell through dealerships. And it was intended to bully, intimidate, and push out Tesla out of the market. They then did that in a number of different states throughout the country. So does that make any sense in a democracy? Of course not. Why do you have to sell your product through a specific vehicle or medium? You can sell it any way you like. That's the most anti-free market thing possible. Why? It was just total, utter corruption. But it's perfectly legal. The Supreme Court legalized bribery. So then what happened in that case? So then Elon came in and gave campaign contributions and reversed it.
It's an open auction. Man, corporatocracy is horrible. This is just communism for companies. You just basically remove the corruption from like elected officials to like someone that pretends to be a producer. But I hate that about business. I hate that it's just who has deeper pockets to lobby is the one that gets to provide value to the world. There's no longer a meritocracy. It's a corporatocracy. But I think it's something that we should be aware of and that we should look at. Again, how does this impact our life? How can you and I now have this knowledge and prepare to future-proof ourselves, future-proof our lives, future-proof our money into a system that is not exposed to this level of corporatocracy? If that is real and all of your money is controlled by this corporatocracy that is the banks, then if the banks are able to lobby and spend enough on lobbying to grease the politicians in Canada or the US or wherever your bank is, then it stands to hold that your money would be exposed at their ability to do what is in their best interest. Meaning, if they say, hey, we want bank fees to be $500 a month unless you can afford to pay us more. Meaning they can raise bank fees, meaning they can charge different interest rates, meaning there's all kinds of different opportunities. And the worst part is you have no control over what they're going to do with your money. Now you have a 30-day withdrawal limit. Now you have a 60 or 120 or a 1-year withdrawal limit. You can no longer use your money to buy gas, to buy power for your home. When we give control of our money into a system that looks a lot like a corporatocracy at this point, we are providing an avenue for people to steal from us. The only way to properly prevent yourself from being stolen from is going to be owning Bitcoin. More importantly, owning Bitcoin in self-custody. So this man, fear is the biggest, most profitable industry on earth. I think he's probably talking about media, but more so the fear that the politicians monger about the climate burning up and the very dangerous disease that's going to be killing you and your grandma. And the next thing, what was it, monkeypox a few weeks ago. You are more willing to give up control and power when you are in fear. And I think that the politicians have hooked into that. The very heart of the capitalism is the banking system and the Federal Reserve circumventing free markets by regulating interest rates and providing liquidity to financial markets. The Fed is a huge windfall for capital and unaccountable to government or the taxpayer. Yeah, you're pretty much bang on here. I mean, when you give someone the ability to literally produce money out of thin air, you create the worst incentive system in the world, because no longer is our economy based on a true meritocracy, the ability to produce value and get rewarded for it. Now our economy looks like this corporatocracy that's being described here, which is money just going to whoever makes my life easier, not necessarily in a value production way. I believe we have the technology at our disposal to implement a system that is not communism, socialism, capitalism, or corporate. In fact, I see capitalism is very much obsolete. Whoa, that's a hot take. As is my fundamental underpinnings of society. I think the world very soon will not resemble this one to the extent that it cannot even be described effectively. I don't think people grasp how much technology is going to alter our existence. Yeah, I mean, look, we haven't really had a sound money free market economy in like hundreds of years. And so I would say technology in this case is just Bitcoin. Technology, as in who does the work, doesn't really make a difference. I think that whether it's robots stocking shelves or robots writing papers or whatever it might be, robots building pyramids and buildings and 3D printing. My mom was all excited the other day. She showed me that someone's printing in Texas, they're 3D printing houses. And that's great. Love that. It's kind of a symptom of the rate of technology, and the way that technology makes our lives cheaper is only possible in a deflationary monetary environment. That deflationary monetary environment can only happen in a monetary policy, in a monetary system that does not have any rulers at the top. We cannot have people that are able to control the money that we use to buy these goods and services, but also to control or what that money can be used for. And we need this open, free, democratic money to exist. So I believe, if I could just I'm gonna just steal this comment here and insert the atomism of it. It's Bitcoin is going to change the way that the economy works. I don't think people grasp how much Bitcoin is going to alter our existence and actually give us a real shot at winning. But you tell me, am I way off base as I have been in the past? You guys really hated that Mark Zuckerberg. You felt I was soft on Zuck. What type of economic system are we actually living here in North America? To me, it does feel like this corporatocracy kind of environment. It feels like we've got these big economies, these big businesses, these big industries that are too big to fail. You know, I personally have been banned from the banks. I have watched my info get leaked and targeted from big media, from big telecom, selling my phone number to scam artists, stealing hundreds of Bitcoin from me. I have seen the effects of what it means when an industry is too big to fail, and I am worse off for it. This hits home to me. But what does it feel like to you? Tell me down below. And most importantly, stay sovereign.